everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Idea to Value podcast. I'm Jasmin Hindi, obviously not your typical host, but interviewing your host, Nick Skillicorn. Nick, it's wonderful having you here today.
Jasmin, it's wonderful speaking with you.
Thank you. So Nick, for people who don't know much about you, can you please tell us a little bit of your background?
It started, I think, with my very multinational background. I'm German by nationality, but I actually grew up in Singapore, having been born in England to a South African father and a Romanian mother. And I think that real mixing of different cultures and different ideas set me up with a lifelong curiosity. I always wanted to know more about the world, know more about how things work. And I think that's what drove my desire to understand how curiosity and creativity and innovation worked. So I started working, first of all, in management consulting right after university, typically just like a lot of the others because I didn't know what job I wanted after that, and spent about...
So not very creative, sorry to interrupt you here, but that doesn't sound very creative.
Yeah, well, especially the work that I was doing was in managing large projects, using very strict timelines, sort of knowing what should be happening in 18 months' time. And I was actually really frustrated by my inability to provide new ideas about how things could be tried differently. So after I finished working in my largest, longest project, which was the Olympics in London, wonderful project, but by that point, I'd been in the industry for more than 8 years, and I was pretty burned out. And so I decided, now's the time to change something. And I went traveling for 6 months around South America, all the while learning about new cultures, but in the back of my mind, always asking myself, is now the time to try something for myself? And I came to the conclusion, if I don't do it now, right before I turn 30, then when am I going to do it? So I left management consulting, started up Improvides, which is my own innovation and creativity company. And I've been helping companies understand how creativity works, how innovation works ever since.
Interesting, thank you, Nick. How does a creativity and innovation expert practice creativity in his own everyday life? I think that's something everyone might be really interested to know.
I know it's really it's a challenge sometimes because the work that I do is very much focused on the evidence behind what makes ideas happen and what prevents them happening. So I learn a lot about what's going on in the brain when you have ideas, going on in teams when ideas are being discussed, and also the primal things happening in your brain that prevent ideas happening, the types of unconscious biases that we all suffer from. And I'm not immune to those biases myself. So I try and encourage myself to do new things as often as possible. Try new activities, go to new places, speak with new people, even if they've got a very different worldview to my own. And all the while asking myself, how can I continue to be curious? So it's one thing to develop the skill of having ideas, but then it's also just as important to execute those ideas. So I run quite a popular blog, the Idea to Value blog, as well as the podcast, as well as producing videos. And what I've found is I need to keep pushing myself to do more and better than I did previously. Okay. So recently I've started writing every weekday instead of more or less once or twice a week, to, as Seth Godin describes it, get in with the practice of publishing work. You're not creative unless you actually put it out there into the world. So I'm trying more and more to keep myself publishing and proactively getting my insights out there.
Interesting. So for your listeners, you were mentioning new activities. Can you give us some more specific examples of new activities you've been up to? Especially now, 2021, year of a pandemic, very difficult with lockdown laws and everything. So some people might be struggling. Can you give us some ideas or some inside views of what you've been up to, please?
Absolutely. Normally, I'd be thinking, where can I go in the world? What new cultures can I see? Whether it's going to Australia and Japan and Africa and South America and other countries around Europe. I haven't been able to do that in the last 12 months. And it's been a bit of a shock to me, not being able to travel extensively, not being able to use that as a way of exposing myself to new ideas. So I've been reading a lot. I've been getting other people's views through the written word. So that's a great way to expose yourself to other people's ideas. And as far as possible, I've been trying to keep doing new things at home. So I've been, for the first time, doing DIY around the house. People might not think that's very creative, but it's building a new set of skills and building a new way of thinking about things. And from putting up a curtain rod, now I'm thinking, how could I build my own table for the living room? We're also together trying to try out new recipes from sources that we hadn't previously done. So for example, yesterday we tried to do a complete detox when it comes to cutting out all sugar, all processed food, only eating vegetables, eggs and potatoes. And it was a real shock to my system. It was something it wasn't used to, but continually trying new things and building your skills when you have the time. That's how I've been spending my time recently.
So would you say those small things you just mentioned, like cooking a new recipe, doing some DIY, do you think that's creative? That counts as a start of being creative?
It's all about getting started. And I think a lot of people are intimidated by creativity. They have this desire to do something, but there's so many things holding them back. Either they're afraid that if they compare themselves to Picasso or to Beyonce or to Da Vinci, that they're not at that level yet and they'll never achieve that level. Or they compare themselves to, especially nowadays, what they see on social media, where everyone's doing these amazing things and having amazing experiences, and they compare themselves. And this comparison can be very damaging because it ignores all of the hard work that you don't see that these people put into developing their skills, often over decades. You can't compare your day 0 to someone else's day 10,000. So I think a lot of people are intimidated in starting, but doing these little things like trying out new recipes, starting woodworking or candle making, or learning how to code or improve your Microsoft Excel skills. All of these little things enable you to approach problems in a new way and develop new solutions, and that's creativity as well. Creativity isn't just about the arts. Creativity is about finding new ways of doing things that add value. So it might be in your home life, it might be in your professional life, it might be in your very, very personal life. If you just try doing new things, thinking about problems in new ways and asking yourself as well, how did I do this previously? And how can I approach it in a new way? All of those things can help you become more creative.
Brilliant, sounds good. So, Nick, do you see a connection between creativity and mental health?
This is a very interesting topic where there's been quite a lot of research and a lot of stigma as well. There seems to be a lot of people who believe that creativity and mental health go hand in hand, especially the negative aspects of mental health. A lot of people can name examples of people in the creative fields who either committed suicide or were heavily dependent on drugs and alcohol or had mental breakdowns. And that's what's called a confirmation bias. It's very easy to take a couple of examples that you know, examples like Kurt Cobain or Virginia Woolf, or Van Gogh, obviously cutting off his own ear, and then saying, well, these people were creative and they had these problems, therefore there must be some link between creativity and mental health. And there's actually been a couple of quite bad scientific studies trying to find this link, where scientists were looking for proof that creativity and mental health were linked, especially the negative aspects of mental health. But what that ignores is that the vast majority of creative people don't actually suffer from acute mental health syndrome and especially problems. They might be more predisposed to mental health problems, but there seems to be research that they're able to cope with those predispositions more effectively than normal people. And in addition, that they both have what we call schizopathy tendencies, but that doesn't manifest itself in any mental health problems. There are a couple of domains of creativity where there seem to be examples of higher liability to mental health problems. For example, in stand-up comedy. Comedians seem to be one of the few groups where there's a real disproportionate risk rate for mental health problems.
Really?
And there's debate about why that is, whether or not people who are predisposed to those mental health problems have a desire to go into comedy, either because of their upbringing or they found that as a way to deal with the problems they have in society. But in general, it's a bit of a myth that you need to have mental health problems to be creative. It's actually something that is perpetrated by a lot of artists and creatives themselves. Back from the 19th century, there was this romantic period where we had these poets and artists, and in order for them to be exemplifying their creativity, they needed to effectively show, oh, I'm suffering. It is this emotional baggage that is leading to my creativity. And so a lot of people would actually make themselves appear more distressed than they would have been normally. And in some cases would have actually started using alcohol heavily, using drugs heavily, because they believed they need to do that in order to be creative. So there's still a bit of this Western idea of the struggling artist that isn't actually backed up by much scientific evidence, but seems to still be an idea that's very strong in our society.
Okay. There's a lot of distress out there right now. So my question to you is, do you believe one can use creativity to escape?
There's a lot to unpack there. I think one of the questions is escaping the right thing? And then if so, how can you use creativity to do it? To a degree, if people are really feeling anxious or distressed by being in the pandemic and not being able to go out and socialize and meet new people, then that can become a real focus point for them. And all of a sudden, the more you think about it, the more you ruminate about what's going wrong, the more it becomes the only thing you can think about. So yes, creative activities and exposing yourself to new creative ideas can definitely take your mind away from that problem and provide a sort of positive growth mindset towards something else. I think that's definitely something that people can do. And as we talked about before, it's little steps, it's getting started, it's doing things repeatedly. It's about telling yourself, I am creative, I can do things, and I can improve. And bit by bit, sort of building up your repertoire of skills, your creative output. Even if you never publish it to the world, even if you do it just for yourself, it can help take away the anxiety and the focus that comes with just thinking about the problems.
So do you have to be in a certain mood to be creative? Some people are very anxious right now. Some people are waiting, for that moment of happiness or traveling again or the easy things. But do you believe in that?
You don't need to wait for the perfect moment to be creative. A lot of people think that creativity is only the moment of the light bulb shining, the eureka moment, as the old Greek Archimedes discovered the idea in that moment. That's not just the only part of creativity. Creativity is, yes, part of the preparation of the mind and the incubation, allowing the mind to rest before an idea comes to you. But that's worthless if you don't do anything with the idea. And that's where this idea of actually executing on your idea, refining it, trying new things, seeing if it works. If it doesn't work, refining it a bit more, finding out it failed and thinking, okay, now's the time to invest in a different idea, or asking yourself why it failed and what it's going to take to make that idea work. There's a lot of opportunity now to spend the time trying new things, even if you don't feel you're ready. You can always start. There's nothing more scary than a blank page, because you don't know anything you could possibly put on it is an opportunity. So sometimes the first scribble, the first moment when you put the pen on the paper is the hardest moment. But once it starts moving, then that's where it becomes easier and easier.
So can you give us any advice on, let's say, I think I'm not creative at all today or this week. Can you give us 3 bits of advice of how to start becoming more creative in everyday life, please?
So the most important thing I'd say to you there, if anyone out there thinks I'm not creative, that is not true. Every human has the ability to be creative and to improve their creativity as well. All of the scientific research shows that the genetics that we're born with don't determine the majority of our creative ability. Most of that comes from our upbringing, how we're taught from our parents, from our schooling system, from our society and what they value as creativity, and probably most importantly, from ourselves and the stories that we tell ourselves. Some people tell themselves, I'm not creative because I'm comparing myself to someone who I think is creative and they can do things that I can't. Well, you can probably do things that they can't as well. You can also ask yourself, how long did it take these people to develop those skills? If you just start developing those skills, you'll be on the same journey as well. There is a degree of talent, of course. Some people are more predisposed to being good at certain things than others, but everyone has the ability to be creative.
So 3 easy bits of advice how to get it started with creativity, with something creative.
Okay, so
people are struggling at the moment.
Absolutely. I'll give you a daily, a weekly, and a monthly example. The daily example is actually force yourself to be creative and to think of something in a new way every day. It sounds like a really strange concept, but ask yourself, what routines do you have? And if you always start the day in the same way, then maybe say, okay, this time instead of putting my underwear on, then my trousers, then my socks, then my shirt, maybe say, first I'm going to put my shirt on, then my socks, then my underwear, and then my trousers. It's going to be quite hard putting on your trousers before your underwear, but there's ways that you can approach that.
So that counts as being creative already?
It counts as being creative, but more importantly, it gives you permission for the rest of the day to get out of these routines and to try things differently. And that's really, really valuable. A lot of people don't even realize how much of their life is spent on autopilot. So even if you write down in a journal every morning, I'm going to be creative today, or I am creative, as simple as that, it tells the brain, yes, I can try things differently. So that's one thing we should start every day with. And every day, try and find something that you do differently than you did before. Especially if you've got an actual problem you're trying to solve. Ask yourself, how did I try and solve this before? What hasn't worked so far? Okay, I'm actively going to try something different. So that's something we can do every day. Every week, you can try and be curious and either try something new or have new experiences. So either read a magazine from an industry that you've not got anything to do with professionally. Go to a museum for a type of art that you've not seen before. Or even speak with a group of people or a type of person that you haven't been exposed to previously. If you can't go out that much, then do some research on different cultures. Look up a foreign language film. Or there's, as we said before, try out a new recipe from a different culture. All of these things, again, reinforce your ability to not only be allowed to try new things, but by trying new things, you get more types of knowledge that you can then sprout ideas from, and new ways of connecting ideas that can result in new creative sort of outputs. And then on a monthly basis, I recommend that everyone has a personal creative project that they're always working on. This doesn't need to be something that you publish to the world. So for example, my creative project is Idea to Value, and the companies and individuals that I help. I'm constantly putting things out there into the world, whether it's research that I do that I then put into blog articles, videos, or podcast interviews. But if you're just getting started, decide on something that you're going to make and finish every month. And it's that word, finish. It doesn't need to be perfect to be finished. If you look at sketches from artists, they are finished on the page and they then now enable the next thing to happen. If you have a creative project that you've been working on, some people for the last couple of months or even years, but you're never feeling that it's ready to go out there, then you might be struggling with perfectionism. And that isn't really the desire to be perfect. It's the fear of the reaction when you think someone else says it's not going to be perfect, and what that is a reflection of you as a person. So if you do something and publish it every month, either if it's a blog article that's password protected and no one else can see it but you, that's one example. Or it could be just publishing a rough draft of a song that you're working on YouTube or SoundCloud, asking for feedback. That can count as well. Or it could be you building a birdhouse for the first time with just simple square pieces of wood. And then the question is, what are you going to do the next month? Are you going to do something that's completely different to expose yourself to new ideas? Or are you going to take what you did previously and refine your skills? So this time, instead of a square house, bird box, square roof, you could do a triangular roof. And then after that, you could perhaps add some ornaments to it and start decorating or making it out of different materials. But every month, do something that's the next stage of what you did previously. And that'll help you get over this fear of perfectionism, and it'll help you develop your skills at the same time.
So setting myself goals where the outcome doesn't have to be perfect, but just setting myself goals and stepping it up every month or every week to achieve something better, that counts as being creative then, doesn't it?
Not only does it count as being creative, it actually produces creative work. And that's so important. It's not just the moment when you have the idea, it's what you do with that idea that counts as well.
Brilliant, Nick. Thank you very much. It's been wonderful having you here.
Thank you, Jasmin. It's been wonderful speaking with you.
Thank you, Nick. All the best. See you soon.
See you soon.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, please like, share and subscribe, and leave me a comment about what you thought and what you'd like to see more about. If you want to take your creativity and innovation capabilities to the next level, then invest in yourself with the premium training only available at ideatovalue.com. These exclusive training modules have all been put together by me, Nick Skillicorn, and have been used by thousands of artists, innovation leaders and CEOs to become better at understanding the source of their creativity and executing on their innovation ambitions. And there is no risk to you, as they are backed by our money-back guarantee. Now, don't forget to go out there and make your ideas a reality. See you again soon.